Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Quattro, and I'm a full-time Advantage Blackjack player, aka a card counter. This means I travel far and wide to find the best blackjack games that offer the most advantage to the player, and I also use card counting to bet higher when the cards are in my favor. This allows me to play with an average edge of 1.5 to 2% over the casino, meaning in the long run I will beat the casino. Now, this is my first YouTube video, so bear with me. I made this channel with the intent to show my point of view in this type of lifestyle, and to help answer people's questions as they try to learn how to do it themselves. There's a lot of misconception around this type of work, and I'd like to clear up as much of it as I can. When I say point of view, I mean that quite literally. I'll be taking you inside the casino with me and narrating my play, documenting the wins and losses, going over the expected value of the game I'm playing, showing basic strategy deviations put to use at real tables, and much more as the channel grows. I want to get us right into the casino action as quick as possible, but first I feel it's necessary to explain a little bit about what I'm actually doing. I'm going to assume that you have a basic knowledge of how blackjack is played, but if you don't, I'll put a link in the description to a video you can watch to help explain it. I use a counting system called high-low, and I'll try to briefly explain it. In high-low, a point value is assigned to high cards and low cards. At the beginning of a game, the count starts at 0. High cards are face cards, 10s, and aces. These cards subtract 1 from the count for each high card dealt. Whenever I see one of these high cards, I subtract 1 from the count in my head. These cards are advantageous to the player, and when the count is in the negative, it means many high cards have been dealt, thus, the odds are worse for the player. 7, 8, and 9 are neutral cards. These cards do not affect the count as they are worth 0, so we will simply ignore them. Low cards are 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are each worth positive 1. Whenever I see one of these low cards, I add 1 to the count in my head. These cards are not advantageous to the player, and when many of them have been dealt, the count will go positive and the player will begin to get an advantage. The count I keep in my head from observing the hands dealt and taking note of high and low cards is called the running count. However, by itself, the running count is useless. It needs to be converted to true count. True count is the running count divided by the number of decks remaining to be dealt in the game. So, if you're playing a game of blackjack that uses 6 decks, and 2 of the 6 decks have been dealt out, your divisor will be 4. So, if we plug 4 into our original equation, and the running count is positive 8, you'd divide 8 by 4, and your true count would be positive 2. I whipped up a chart here to show the advantage gained with each true count. So as you can see, as the true count gets more positive, the player's advantage increases by about 0.5% per single true count. I'll be adjusting my bet with the true count. That's basically the whole point of counting cards, to know when to bet high when you have the advantage. Today I will be playing a minimum bet of $25 in true counts of 0 or lower, and I will be betting up to 2 hands of 1,000 at true 6 or higher. My bet spread is on the screen, and I will be narrating my play as I go through the spread. As you can see, I have 2 different spreads, one for playing when there is other people at the table, and a second spread to play when I am the only player at the table. Of course, I'm also using proper basic strategy, as well as count-based deviations that come up. That's all I'll explain for now. In future videos, I will educate you on how to play proper basic strategy, count cards, what to do with the count once you have it, basic strategy deviations, and finally, how to bet properly and manage risk with your bankroll. Now, I'm technically on vacation, but that only means I'm not actively doing trips right now. I have been sticking to local spots near me since the end of June, as I wanted to take some time off of traveling to enjoy the summer at home. Now that we've got all the learning out of the way, I figured we would get right into the action, showing a day in the life of me playing my local spots. This video will be somewhat of a test for me as I work the kinks out with my filming setup, but hopefully we can catch some good wins on film. This first spot I'm going to is my favorite local. I've clocked many hours here, and usually the worst they'll do once they know I'm an advantage player is half shoe me. It's been a few weeks since I've been here, so hopefully they forgot about my last visit. Let's go see if we can make some money here today. So in the interest of not having a video that is multiple hours long, I'll be skipping through a lot of the footage and getting right to situations where I'm playing at a true 1 or higher. You're seeing me buy in right now for $400, and now I'll start playing and hopefully get into some positive counts. So here you'll see we played about a deck and a quarter into the shoe, and I was dealt an 11 versus an ace. True count was 1, so I doubled, got an 8, dealer busted, and I won. Here we are a couple hands after that first one, and the count has now raised to true 2. Now normally I would put out 2 hands of 200, but I only had 350 in chips in front of me, so I just put out 2 hands of 175. Got dealt 2 20s, ended up winning both of them. The reason I didn't buy in another $100 to bet my proper 2 hands of 200 is because I wanted to avoid bringing attention to myself. The pit boss verifies all cash buy-ins, and they weren't paying attention as I raised bets, so I was hoping to fly under the radar a little while longer. Shortly after this big hand of 2x150, the count dropped into the negatives for the rest of the shoe. At the end of the shoe, the guy playing beside me ended up leaving, which is great for me because it increases my rounds per hour, and I played a little bit into the shoe before the count got positive again. So again on this second shoe, we got about a deck and a half in before the count raised to a true 1, in which I was dealt 2 3s, ended up splitting them, won one of them, lost the other. After that hand, the count raised to true 2. Since I was playing solo now, I just did one hand of 300, which I had to buy in $100 to do so, and at this time the pit boss was actually starting to make comments about my play, so I knew they were on to me what I was doing, and I knew my time was limited, so I just decided to stop trying to hide anything and just buy in and do the necessary bets. It was worth the extra buy-in because I was dealt a 13 against a 3, in which the dealer busted, so I was paid out $300. On the next hand, count raised to true 3, which meant one hand of $500. I was dealt a 20, dealer pulled a few cards, ended up with 20 as well, so it was a push. For the next hand, the count remained at true 3, so I left my $500 bet out. I was dealt a 20, and the dealer drew to 19, which means it was a win for me. Now the true count has risen to 4, which means one hand of 1,000. I put it out there, and unfortunately I was dealt a 14 versus a 10. With Canadian rules, this dictates a surrender, so I surrendered my bet and lost half my hand. True count was now back down to true 3. I was dealt a blackjack, so I was paid out $750 on a $500 blackjack. Once again, the count remained at true 3. I was dealt a 17 versus dealer 4. Luckily, the dealer drew enough cards to bust, so I was paid out again, $500. The count of true 3 was still hanging on, so I bet another $500. I was dealt 14 versus a 6. I stood, and luckily the dealer drew enough cards to bust, and I was paid. Unfortunately, you can't win them all, and on this next $500 bet, I was dealt a 17 versus a 10. I stood, and dealer drew to 19, which means it was a loss for me. Now once again, $500 bet was dealt a 20. Dealer had 4. Luckily drew to 22, so it was a win for me. And here you see me contemplating on what the true count is, because it must have been very close. I ended up settling on a 2.5, so I put out a bet of $400, and luckily I dropped it because I did end up losing this one. But on the bright side, the count had recovered back to true 3, so I put another hand of 500 out. I was dealt a 20, which had me excited, but sadly the dealer also drew to 20, so it was a push. All those face cards brought the true count down to 2, so I was back down to one hand of 300. I was dealt a 17 versus a 6, and luckily the dealer busted. The true count remained at 2, so I put another bet of 300 out. I got dealt a 20 versus dealers 2, and they drew to a bust. After that, the count dropped back down to true 1 for a couple hands, which didn't go very well, but then the count went back up again to true 2, so I put another bet of 300 out. I was dealt a 14 versus a 3, I stood, and luckily the dealer drew to a bust. The count remained at true 2, so it was another hand of $300. I was dealt 18 versus a 10, I stood, and dealer drew an 8, which meant it was a push. I'm going to skip ahead here because the count dropped back down to 1, and then eventually back to 0 for several hands, and eventually it did make a recovery, so I was able to start putting some more big bets out. So as you can see, the count recovered to a true 2. I put a bet of $300 out. I was dealt 19 versus dealers 3, and luckily the dealer drew to a bust. Still a true 2. I was dealt 9 versus a 10. I had to keep drawing, and eventually I busted, so this one was a loss for me. Similar story with this next one. I was dealt 15 versus a 5. Dealer ended up pulling to 17, so it was another loss for me. Here on this next hand, we see I settled at a true 2.5 again as I put out another bet of 400. I was dealt 19 versus 5, and luckily dealer drew to a bust. Now the count was back up to true 3, so the $500 bet went out. I was dealt 17 versus an ace. Sadly, in Canada there's no ace surrender, so I had to just stick with it, and it was a loss for me. The count was now down to true 2, so I was down to a $300 bet. I was dealt 19 versus an ace. Dealer ended up pulling a 20, so it was a loss for me. After this loss, there was only 3 hands left in the shoe. 2 of them were minimum bets and 1 of them was a true 1, so nothing exciting to see here. Let's move on to the next shoe. So after that shoe, I played an entire shoe completely negative, so there was no chance to up my bets. But by the time the next shoe came around, we were about a deck and a half in and the count looked like it was starting to go up. The count hit true 1, so I threw out a bet of $100. I was dealt a 20 versus dealer's 2, and she drew to a bust, which was a win for the both of us. Here the count went up to a true 2, so it was a bet of $300. I was dealt a 20 versus a dealer's 5, and she drew to 17, which means it was a win for me. The $300 bet stayed out once again, and I was dealt 18 versus dealer's 10. She ended up drawing to 17, so again, another win for me. And finally, after all this time, we got some action. Another bet of 300 out, I got dealt a soft 18 versus a 2, which is a double. I was given a 5, which brought my total down to 13, so not great, but luckily the dealer busted and it was a win for me. And again, another bet of $300. This true count of 2 is holding on. However, I was dealt a 15 versus a 10, so that is a surrender and I lost half my bet. Another bet of 300 went out, and I was dealt a 13 versus an ace. I drew a 4 to make 17, which I had to stand on, and the dealer pulled a 10 for the first dealer blackjack of the whole session. After this hand, the count dropped back down to true 1 for a few, and then back down to 0, so I was back to minimum bets for the rest of the shoe. Once again, nothing exciting to see there, so let's just fast forward to the next shoe. And there it is, the half shoe. That means my time here is done, and it's time to color up and hit the cage. We will regroup and get them next time. Alright, so we got a win out of those guys, which is awesome. Always feels good to walk away from the table being up. And now we're off to my second favorite spot. Unfortunately, this next place is kind of hit and miss. Depending on the day, sometimes they don't open the table that I like. And every other game is CSM, which is a continuous shuffler, which makes it uncountable. So hopefully they got the shoe game open. We'll just have to go over there and check.
Excuse me, are you guys gonna open the shoe game tonight? Which one? The shoe game, the blackjack over there.
That's a $25 bill.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
it'll be open.
Do you know what time?
I gotta wait for. I want to say in a half hour.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, I'll come back around then.
okay, but
Thank you.
sorry about this.
Yeah, no worries.
So that spot was a no-go for now, but I got another place we'll go, and that should burn up 30 minutes, and then we'll come back and see if they open that table. Normally when I come to this place, it's super busy, so it was refreshing to only see one person sitting at the table. He was halfway through a game, so I sat down and waited for a new shoe. Once again, I bought in for $400 and started playing minimum bets until the count went up. So I played about 3 decks into the shoe, and the count was kind of jumping around, going from true 1 back to 0 for a while, then true 1, etc. So I'm not going to bother showing any of that, but here we got into a true 1, so I had a $100 bet out, and then I had a 9, which doubled against a 3, dealer bust, and I won. After that, the true count jumped up to 2. Since I was playing with another player, I put out 2 hands of 200, and unfortunately it didn't go very well. I got dealt an 8 and a 14 versus dealer 10, so I surrendered the 14, hit the 8 and got a 10 for 18, and the dealer flipped a 10 showing 20, so I lost my first hand as well. And for some reason I touched my bet, which the dealer didn't like and told me I do know better, so I don't know what I was doing.
Yeah, my bad. I'm sorry.
After that hand, it went down to true 1, so I put $100 out, got a blackjack and won it, and then for the rest of that shoe the count went negative. Unfortunately, I don't have any more footage from this place because at the beginning of the next shoe, they half-shoed me, making the game unplayable, so I left.
Thank you.
So sadly couldn't get much done there. I decided just to get out of there before they came asking for ID, because that's something I always try to avoid at my local spots. But now we'll go back to that other spot because it's now about an hour later and they should have that table open, but we'll see. Now, I did hit one more spot today, but I'm going to save that for a part 2. This video is already 20 minutes long and I want to pace myself. Unfortunately, we didn't get to go above a true 4 today, but all that changes at the next spot. So make sure you tune in next time for some more exciting high-stakes blackjack. Also, if anyone watching this wants to learn how to get started in Advantage Blackjack or to hone their skills further, you should check out our school. We have live training sessions, Q&A sessions, mini courses, and the 24/7 chat. Link will be in the description. Thank you everyone for watching. I had a ton of fun making this video and I intend to keep the uploads coming. Please like and subscribe, follow me on my socials, and don't be afraid to leave me feedback in the comments. I want to make this as entertaining as possible for the viewers, so just let me know what you want to see more of or less of. Until next time, Quattro out.